Yes, good morning. And this week's parsha is Parshas Ba'aloscha. Parshas Ba'aloscha begins with Daber el Aaron v'yamarto Ela Ba'aloscha saneros el mul pnei menorah yo'iru shiva saneros. The first thing that Aaron was commanded after all the korbanos were brought in dedication and celebration of the beginning of the actual Mishkan activity was that Aaron was told to go light the menorah. Now the Shalach HaKadosh talks about the fact that there were 3 steps in front of the menorah. And he says that really the menorah could have been situated in a way that there would not have had to been steps to get to light the actual menorah. But he explains that the shortcomings of the world, of people, all stem from hakina v'hakavod, hakina hataiva v'hakavod, and from the jealousy and from the desires of the world and a person's ego seeking recognition and kavod, honor. That is the shortcoming and the biggest problems of humanity. So the Shalach HaKadosh says that what the steps before illuminating the world, so to speak, you go in a dark room, you light a candle, there's lots of light. So before the actual lighting, he had to go up the 3 steps. But says the Shalach HaKadosh that he purposely was happy that the 3 steps are there for him to eradicate those 3 problems by the character and personality of Yidden that were their drawbacks to success in learning Torah and doing mitzvahs b'shleimus, that these 3 things always presented their ugly heads to hold back the success of the mission of Klal Yisrael. Now Rashi at the very beginning of the Sedra says, why was the menorah of Ba'aloscha, the beginning of the Sedra, put right after Naso, the juxtaposition of the fact that the celebration of everything that took place was put right back to back, right next to each other. So Rashi says, the famous medrash, that Lefi she'ra'a Aaron shelohu v'lo shivto, not he nor his shevet participated at all. That means there were 12 days from Rosh Chodesh Nisan until 3 days before Pesach, that each day a different shevet, but Shevet Levi did not participate. And there were 12 because Yosef was split into Ephraim and Menashe, so there were 12 without Levi. And Rashi quotes it, Chol Shadaita, he was very dejected and disappointed that he had no day for his shevet. Now, on the lashon of Velohu Velo Shivto, the Chazal jump at the opportunity, and the Medrash talks about it, that when we say Lohu Velo Shivto, we're talking about Aaron. And to say Velo Shivto he wasn't the Nasi of Shevet Levi, Moshe Rabbeinu was. So why would the Rashi, why would the Medrash say Shivto, his Shevet, as if he was the Nasi? Also, the problem with Aaron was that he had this great disappointment, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered him that Shelacha Gedola Mishelahem, that your chelik is bigger than their chelik. That means the Nesiim went, they had their day for their shevet and brought their korban, but that was it. They had one day. And you, Aaron, you're going to be lighting every day the menorah. So the power of what you are designated to do is 10 times bigger and more. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered him. About the issue of his shevet, that it's called Shivto, so we could best understand that, let's say somebody is a teacher's aide with 2 students in a school, and then they are appointed teacher of a classroom. So even though their whole mind and their preparation and their concern were for these 2 students, that they were an apprentice, that they were a tutor for, but when they become teacher of an entire classroom of 20 students, they're not just concentrating on those 2, they're concentrating on the bigger picture. And lahavdil, if someone's a governor of a state, and then he becomes president, so when he was governor of the state, he was worried about issues of the state, the construction of the streets, and local issues that was under his mantle of leadership. But when he becomes president, it widens the scope. He's not just concerned about his state, he's concerned about all of the states. So the truth is that Moshe Rabbeinu was the Nasi of the Shevet. But once he became Rabban Shel Kol Yisrael, that he became the overall leader, so he was not just concerned about Shevet Levi, he was concerned about the whole Klal Yisrael. So it fell to Aaron HaKohen that scope and vision of what had to be for Shevet Levi and the protection of Tahara and Kedusha and Kehanim and everything that fell under that pillar, under that column of responsibility. And that's why he was saddened about himself and about his Shevet. But his answer was that he was going to have for eternity to light the world up. So the Ramban jumps on that statement and says, what do you mean eternity? The Bais HaMikdash was destroyed. They didn't light the menorah after the Bais HaMikdash was destroyed. So explains the Ramban that we know that in Bereshis, that by every mimer it said Vayas Vayehi Chen. Hashem said, let there be this, Vayehi Chen. Let there be that, Vayehi Chen. One exception, the exception was light. Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, Vayehi Or. It doesn't say Vayehi Chen. And the Zohar HaKadosh asks that why doesn't, by light, Yehi Or, why doesn't it say Vayehi Chen like it's said by everywhere else? And the Zohar HaKadosh answers and says, Mishum, because the lo hava chen, that it was not so. Everything else in the bria, the water, the trees, the flowers, the animals, everything that was created in the first 6 days of Sheshis Yemei Bereshis remained forever as it was created. That's how it was. But or, light, came down to the world, a beautiful, powerful, ruchniistic light, and after the Chet of Adam Arishon, no more. It was taken away and it became known as the Or HaGonuz. Now this Or HaGonuz is from when Mashiach will come. But Aaron HaKohen was not happy that it was taken away from the world and that Klal Yisrael would have to wait until Mashiach to enjoy its rays and its sunshine, because the light we have is only the substitute, and when that light will come, we'll see what real light is. So Aaron was disappointed about that. So when he lit the menorah, he wanted to bring back into that flame the power of the Or HaGonuz. Says the Ramban, but it was only the two Batei Migdash were 410 and 420 years. And it didn't remain. And it didn't remain in the world, so Aaron HaKohen worked out that he saw there was going to be Hanukkah. And after the Churban Bais Sheni took place, so there was a Churban Bais Sheni, that there was going to be Hanukkah. And he successfully put in the power of propelling the Or HaGonuz into every light and candle on Hanukkah of our menorahs, which remain from then to this day, which is eternity, and continuing on. So that Or HaGonuz, and that's why the pasuk says, Vaya'as Cain Aharon, that the Vayehi Cain, the Cain that was missing in Bereshis, came back and was here when he kindled the menorah. So it was for eternity. Now, we know that there is mentioned in this Sedra the chatzotzros, the trumpets. And when Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to gather Klal Yisrael or summon them for war, or Yom Tov was coming, uskatem b'chatzotzros, that there was a blasting of these trumpets to tell Klal Yisrael to see what and listen what was the agenda of what they had to be sensitive to and to respond. Now there was a special halacha by these silver trumpets that they had to be miksha. Miksha means chiseled out. That you took a chunk of silver and they had to chisel out. They could not take pieces of silver and make the handles and then attach them. Take the other pieces, the buttons to blow the trumpets. It had to be miksha. And we find that there are two other things that had to be mixture. One was the menorah. It had to be mixture from the gold, the chunk of gold. And the third thing had to be the kruvim, the cherub childlike faces on top of the aron, which was placed into the Kodesh Kodashim, that it had to be chiseled. Those three things, the menorah, the chatzotzros, and the kruvim. So the Reisha Rav said there is a tremendous lesson why these three things of everything in the Bais Hamikdash. And he said that the menorah had to be because the menorah shows leadership, because menorah had shemen, and that's chokhmah, that's the remez to Torah. And leadership, because when you chisel something out, there's no pieces, it's complete. And when a person has a rav, has a halacha he has to decide for his kehillah. And he knows that there's a group for it and there's a group against it. He's not allowed to start thinking, well, this guy gives me every perm $500 and he's against it, but the halacha I feel is for it. He's not allowed to think, whoa, I better temper this because he may be angry and he wouldn't give me the $500. The leadership role by halacha and by Torah has to be complete, decisive, on target. And that is represented by the idea of miksha. The next thing is the children, the kruvim, because the kruvim had childlike faces. That when you're bringing up children, said the Reisha Rav, there can be no compromise. That means we have to even up the level of love, and the level of sternness. There has to be structure. There has to be a system. There has to be organization that's adhered to. A child can't grow up feeling that they could do whatever they want and it makes no difference. But there has to be a system and it has to be adhered to. And that requires miksha, chiseling, that there has to be perfection. That you want your children to grow up with your shamayim and with everything that comes with it. You have to have a system and adhere to it very carefully. And the last thing, the chatzotzros were leadership. So the menorah was chiseled because of the halacha, and the Torah and its concepts have to be uncompromising, complete. Kruvim means the generation that's coming up, your children. And chatzotzros is the leadership that Moshe Rabbeinu, when Klal Yisrael heard the sounding of the chatzotzros, that they all jumped to attention and they came up to the line of duty as they were required to either go to war or to get ready for Yom Tiv. But it wasn't. That's why they all three had to be chiseled and miksha. Now, in the Sedra, Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu to choose 70 people to become the Sanhedrin. And there's a long discussion who these people were. Because how could the Sanhedrin had no Kol Torah Kula, and a lot of these were just simple people that Moshe Rabbeinu chose. So the Medrash says, and Kadmonim bring, that these were the neshamas, of the people who in Mitzrayim were beaten on themselves, and that they were not willing to enforce the decrees of beating in servitude Klal Yisrael, and they took it on their own shoulders, and that there was a ness, and that the day that they were appointed, they went to sleep, they woke up in the morning. The Targum Yonasan ben Azil talks about they woke up in the morning and they knew all Shas and all Shulchan Aruch. It was a miracle. And the miracle was done for them because of their sensitivity for another Yid. Now the Lashon, the Mefarshim are all curious. Why does it say Shivim Ish? Ish is a singular. Shivim is a plural, 70. Why doesn't it say Shivim Anoshim? So the Medrash answers this question and says there's two places in the Torah that we see the word Ish. Hashem Ish Milchama, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is compared to Ish, to that Lashon, and Hashem Ish Milchama, in that specific pasuk, it's referring to the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Tamim and a fighter in his Tamimus for the perfection of the Torah, Mitzvahs, and Klal Yisrael. So it's called Ish, a singular, that there's one singular effort for the person in his thrust forward in his mission. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that every person has to learn up from that midah, that when he undertakes a mitzvah or something that he has to be involved in, he is able to do so with the power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving it to him, and he constantly attaching him to the concept of Ish. But there's a second time that the word Ish is used, and that's by Moshe Rabbeinu, Veho Ish, Moshe Anav Ma'od. On one end, you have HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the Gevura and the power and the dynamics of the leader and creator of the world and the people. And then you have on the other end of the spectrum, Moshe Rabbeinu's humility, that no leader can ever be so big and unable to admit a mistake. It means we're put into very testy situations. When Moshe Rabbeinu got up and said, when Aaron didn't eat on Rosh Chodesh Nisan because he was an ovel, and he didn't eat from 2 of the 3 korbanos, and Moshe Rabbeinu got angry at him and said to him, you should have done. Aaron answered him and explained why they were exceptions, that he really was not allowed to eat from them. So Moshe Rabbeinu heard what he said, Vayishma Moshe Vayitav Be'einav. He agreed, he said, you know, Aaron, I forgot the halacha. In front of a whole Klal Yisrael, imagine, somebody had to get up in Yankee Stadium in front of tens of thousands of people and say, I forgot the halacha. You are right. Now it takes in leadership a great thing. You'll find quite often a teacher makes a mistake and he or she tries to cover it up. Oh, there's another opinion, like I said, really, and this. They are trying to smooth it over to save their own ego. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have a second thought, and neither did Yehuda. Tzadka mimeni. He admitted to Tamar in front of other thousands of people. They were about to burn the woman with twins inside of her. And Yehuda stepped forward and said, 100%, this woman committed the act of intimacy, and I was the one, the participant with her. To say that in front of everyone and as a matter of fact, that's why Yaakov Avinu gave him Malchus. We know that every Melech Yisrael came from Yehuda. And in the time of Hanukkah, when the others took kahuna and did things, Malchus, they took the Malchus, they were punished for it, and they died out. But Yehuda got it. Why? Because he was able to master the ego and to be able to control himself. And despite how Moshe Rabbeinu would look or Yehuda would look, the issue wasn't that. It was what was the absolute truth, even at the expense of his whole prestige and posture. So that's why it's called Shivim Ish and not Shivim Anoshim. Because we have to be at one point, we have to be steadfast and firm in our conviction and our commitment. And on the other hand, there has to be times that we have to humbly step forward and do the right thing. And that's why it says Ish, to compare to the two, Hashem Ish, Milchama, and V'ha'ish Moshe Anav Ma'od. Now we know that at the end of this Sedra, there is an episode with Miriam who spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu. Some say what she said was, he took somebody, a third class in the tier of hierarchy and social status, a wife that was really third class. She was nothing special, and she was. And now, after all this, that the Torah was given through Moshe Rabbeinu, she felt that now maybe he had to take another wife with status. Anyway, she spoke negatively. We know the Marimi Pana says that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he came down from the mountain, Shuv lo ochal v'shuv lo shosa. He never again in his lifetime ate or drank, and that included marital relationships. And Miriam says the Chazal, she was complaining. I mean, he's married to her, and how could he deny the framework of marriage from her? Anyway, whatever she was saying, whether this opinion or that opinion, it was a criticism of Moshe Rabbeinu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu stepped in right away, and he said, how dare you? How could you speak about my most trusted, wonderful servant, my most loyal friend, my most loyal person in the world to me, and you're talking about him? And she came down with tzara'as. Now people call it leprosy. It's not leprosy, but it was a skin ailment, and that's why they call it commonly leprosy. But anyway, she came down with it, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, oh, you have to step out of the machna, out of the encampment for 7 days. And the pasuk says that the people, Klal Yisrael, waited the 7 days before they continued their journey. Now the Medrash says, why did Miriam merit that the whole Klal Yisrael should wait 7 days? And it answers and says, because she waited 1 hour to see what was going to happen with her brother Moshe when he was placed into the basket of reeds, that little cradle, and put into the water. Vateisat savachoso merachok ledeya maye osalo. She stood there for 1 hour watching. Says the Medrash that she, for that hour, was zoicha to Klal Yisrael, waiting for her 7 whole days. But they all ask, why is it that there was an 80-year span till she got rewarded for that hour of standing there? She was only a 5-year-old little girl, much more, of course, mature than a 5-year-old today is. But if it was such a noteworthy thing that she did, why didn't she right away have some sort of it took 80 years later, this story of Miriam becoming Mitzaras Kasholeg is 80 years later. So the Chazal answer and say, because they never fully appreciated Moshe Rabbeinu until now. Yes, there's always a leader. He was the leader. And we see that they had tainas on him. The Medrash says that there was such dirt thrown at Moshe Rabbeinu constantly. They even said that they were chosheh that he was mizana with an Ashes Ish. The Medrash says. I mean, how could anyone even think such a thing? That peh el peh adaber bo. So Moshe Rabbeinu suffered a lot and got it in the teeth from the people. Chazal say, according to an opinion, that it was always the Erev Rav, the troublemakers who came out of Mitzrayim with them, that they always stirred up the difficulties. In addition to this Dasan and Aviram, who were the constant troublemakers by Klal Yisrael. But Klal Yisrael never realized the level of how great they saw for one sentence of what she said, Miriam, that she had to leave the Machna. This was the sister of Moshe Rabbeinu, sister of Aaron HaKohen, and their lives. Moshe Rabbeinu's life was due to her. She came to her father and said, "You're worse than Paro. Paro wants us only to kill the boys. You want us to have no girls and have no boys at all?" And he accepted what she said and remarried Yocheved. So, excuse me. So, Klal Yisrael stood back and said, is that the level of how Kadosh and Tahor Moshe Rabbeinu is so beloved? And it was only at a time that the full flourish and appreciation of who and what Moshe Rabbeinu was, that could she be repaid when there would be a full appreciation of Moshe Rabbeinu and what she accomplished by waiting that hour and protecting his safety, ran right up to Bas Paro. Maybe we can find someone of the Hebrews, of the Jewish women, to nursemaid him and to this, to take care of him further. And that's why they waited for an 80-year window to pay her back for that hour. Now, in our parsha, we have a major discussion about Pesach Sheni. And as you know, Pesach Sheni was a Yid never has lost himself or his way completely. There's always a second chance. What was it? That the people on Pesach who could not bring the Korban Pesach, they were Tomei, they were too far away, there was a problem with them bringing the Paschal lamb, the Korban Pesach. So they stepped forward to Moshe Rabbeinu, and they said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Lama Nigora, why should we lose out? We weren't negligent. We were legitimately exempt from bringing it because of X, because of Y, because of C. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, I'll ask Hashem. And he said, yes, and Yud Daled Iyar, 30 days after Erev Pesach, we have the opportunity, someone who didn't bring the Korban Pesach, to bring the Korban Pesach. So the Orach Chaim HaKadosh asks, why is it specifically by this mitzvah? That means, let's say on Sukkot, someone could not get hold of he was on an island, he was shipwrecked, he was in a hospital bed, and he was very sick, lo aleinu, lo aleichem, and he couldn't take the lulav or the esrig. Why weren't they given a second chance a month later to get the lulav and esrig and say the bracha and get the mitzvah? So asks the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, why only with the mitzvah of Korban Pesach is there such a thing that we find that if somebody completely missed the mitzvah, he has a second chance to do it? And he and others answer that the yesod of Emunah comes from Pesach, and the source of it is so strong and its roots go to the Korban Pesach that open up the vistas for Klal Yisrael, even when we're not bringing the Korban Pesach, like today, but the lingering over Klal Yisrael and inserted into the essence of their very being is the powerhouse of Emunah to be able to flourish and come forth in its fullest way for Klal Yisrael because of that Korban Pesach. So for the Nekuda of Emunah, of faith, there was nothing more instrumental and important than that Korban Pesach, and that's why that and that only is the one mitzvah that we could miss it legitimately and have a second chance at coming back to bring it. And as I said to you before Pesach, that Pesach is the shoirish of all Yomim Toivim, because the power of Pesach seeps into the innermost sanctum of every Yid's heart, mind, living experience of life each and every day. Now, there is a short pasuk or two that the people were complaining, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu came and he wiped them out. They were complaining about this, they were complaining about the meat. And the Ramban talks about the question, why does the pasuk say kim misoinanim? Misoinanim means complainers, those who are voicing constant discontent. Misoinanim. Why does the pasuk put a chof in front of the word misoinanim? Because that makes it translate like complainers. And he explains that there were certain legitimate things bothering some of the Yidden that were legitimate. It wasn't 100% wrong. But says the Ramban, so if it wasn't wrong, why were they killed immediately? And he answers and says, because indeed they had the complaints and some of them were justifiable, but they ignored all the good. That means we wake up in the morning and we have 2 or 3 problems of the day in business, with our spouses, with our children, with our employer. We have some legitimate claims that could be refined or corrected. But you can't turn a sad, sour face and not acknowledge the beauty and dignity that Hashem has bestowed on you, with your families, with your children, with your students, with the fact that you get out of bed in the morning and that you thrive and that you are functional and that you do so many things in the day. So why would we ignore all of that? And that, says the Rambam, was why they were killed. Because a person who's not a Makir Tov can never survive in this world. And that's the reason that I mentioned to you either last year or the year before, that Avram Avinu came and he begged Hashem to save Sodom. 50 people, 40 people, 30, 20, 10, and not one was saved. But Lot left Sodom with the 2 angels, the 2 Malachim, and he said, you're supposed to destroy now 5 cities. I want you to save Tzoar because I want to go live there. And they said to him, okay, we're taking Tzoar off of our list. So Mefarshim asked, Avram Avinu begged for even some people to be set. Nothing. He got nothing. And here the angels granted on the spot to the Rosh Marusha. We know that Lot was a tzaddik gomer till he went down to Mitzrayim with Avram Avinu, and in those 90 days in Mitzrayim became spoiled and ruined. And now he was a Rosh Marusha, and that's why he wanted to live in Sodom, because he heard everything goes in Sodom. You can do whatever you want. And that's why he chose to go there. Rashi says that he gave the reason for the cattle and the grazing only as a cover-up. Rashi says it, brings down the Medrash. So the point being that in life, so the answer, why was it done for Lot to save the whole city of Tzoar and Avram couldn't? Because Avram Avinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu to save. He didn't. Had he asked those 3 angels that came and he gave such hachnosas orchem to, they would have had to do it. Hakoras Hatov. Lot didn't ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to save Tzoar. He asked the 2 angels that he saved their lives. He even, Meshuggah, offered his daughters in place of anything, but don't touch my guests. So they owed him Hakoras Hatov big time. He asked for such a thing, he got it. We have to be able to refine our character and direct our motions and thoughts to the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to the generosity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our lives each and every day. Bracha v'hatzlacha.